7. Nazi Tunnels of Death. Have you ever heard of the Nazi Tunnels of Death? They are one of the most disturbing reminders of the atrocities committed by Germany during World War II. On the small island of Alderney, located in the English Channel, the complex holds 4 underground tunnels that were used by the Nazis as slave labor camps. They were also used as a base of operations for U-boats. The island of Alderney was first occupied by the Germans in 1940. They fortified it with bunkers, gun emplacements, and anti-aircraft batteries. They also planned to use the site as a launching pad for their British invasion, and they needed a secure and concealed place to store their supplies. That's why they decided to build the tunnels underneath the island itself, using over 6,000 forced laborers from France, Russia, Poland, and other enemy countries. The conditions inside the tunnels were beyond brutal. The laborers were forced to work in severely cramped and dark conditions for over 12 hours a day, with little to no food and substandard sanitation. Many were beaten and tortured by guards. Some were even killed. The tunnels were filled with human remains, and evidence of the brutal treatment the laborers faced was everywhere. One of the survivors, a Polish man named Jan Loris, remembered his experiences in the tunnels. He said, "We worked like animals. We slept on the ground, on wooden planks, or on straw. We had no blankets, no clothes, and no shoes. We had no soap, no water, and no toilets. We had lice, fleas, rats, and diseases. We had no hope, no dignity, no freedom." The tunnels were officially abandoned when the war ended in 1945, and they stayed forgotten until the 1960s, when they were rediscovered by local law enforcement. They were shocked by what they uncovered, so they decided to preserve the complex as a memorial site. Today, visitors can explore the tunnels and learn all about their historical significance. The Alderney Tunnel Complex serves as a grim reminder of the horrors of war and the cruelty that came with the Nazi regime. It stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and as a warning against the dangers of fascism and bigotry. 6. Raven Rock. Imagine a scenario where the United States is under a nuclear attack and the president and other top officials have to leave Washington, D.C. for safety. Where would they go? The answer is Raven Rock, a little-known military base in Pennsylvania under the Appalachian Mountains. This base is one of the most secure facilities in the country and has been used to plan and execute strategic nuclear operations for over 60 years. Raven Rock was built in the 1950s during the Cold War and was meant to be a backup government center in case of a nuclear attack. The base was officially designated as Site R, which stood for the Raven Rock Mountain Complex. It's built 650 feet, 198 meters high, and not much of the facility is visible from the ground. It is entirely self-sufficient with its water supply, sewage treatment, and even electrical generation. There are enough provisions to last thousands of people for years if necessary. Inside the base, highly trained Army and civilian personnel are stationed around the clock to ensure that the facility is kept clean and secure. After all, you never know when danger could strike. Among the facilities available in the complex, there's a medical unit, a communication center, and a war room. The war room is the most crucial facility at Raven Rock. It is where the Joint Chiefs of Staff, JCS, the Secretary of Defense, SECDEF, and the President of the USA would escape if the country were ever under attack. The room has the most modern technology and maps of every possible target in the world. The purpose of this facility is to allow the United States government to continue functioning if the unthinkable ever happened. Raven Rock is an essential facility in America's defense infrastructure. It is a testament to the country's ingenuity and determination to ensure that the nation can continue to function in the face of destruction. But Raven Rock also raises some ethical and political questions about the role of the government during a nuclear war. How would the government communicate with the public and other countries? How would it ensure democracy and accountability continues? How would it deal with the aftermath of a nuclear war? These are some of the issues that Raven Rock forces us to ponder. Raven Rock remains shrouded in secrecy, but its essential function cannot be stressed more. It is a hidden fortress that could potentially save America from annihilation. 5. Fort Detrick. Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland, is a fascinating, mysterious place. It's a United States Army Medical Command installation with a rich history of covert military operations. The installation's secret laboratory, the USAMRIID, U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, has been the subject of many conspiracy theories centering around the development and research of biological weapons. USAMRIID was initially established in 1969 to look into infectious diseases that threatened military personnel. Over the years, the lab's research expanded to include studies on biological weapons and even extreme biodefense measures. Some of the diseases and weapons the lab has researched include anthrax, Ebola, plague, and ricin. The lab was thrust into the public eye in the aftermath of the 2001 anthrax attacks, when 5 people were killed and 17 others were infected with anthrax spores. But Fort Detrick has not only been involved in secret military operations, but also in defensive measures against opposing biological weapons. The installation is home to the U.S. Army Medical Research and Development Command and is responsible for developing countermeasures against chemical, biological, radiological, and even nuclear threats. The installation has also played a crucial role in responding to infectious disease outbreaks, like the 2014 Ebola epidemic and the recent 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the installation's controversial past, Fort Detrick is a critical component of the United States' national security. Through its research and development of medical countermeasures, the installation helps protect against bioterrorism threats and infectious disease outbreaks. Fort Detrick is also a source of innovation, since it has contributed to many scientific breakthroughs and achievements over recent years. 4. Yulin Naval Base. The Yulin Naval Base is a highly classified military facility on the southern coast of Hainan Island, China. It is the largest and most advanced nuclear submarine base in the country, and it plays a vital role in naval strategy and deterrence. The Chinese government is very secretive about the base and hasn't revealed much information about its operations, size, or capabilities. But based on satellite imagery and intelligence reports, it is estimated that the base has dozens of docks and piers for various submarines, as well as underground hangars, repair facilities, and even training areas. The base was built back in the late 1980s and is designed to provide a secure location for the storage, maintenance, and launch of China's nuclear-powered subs. These submarines are equipped with nuclear reactors that allow them to stay submerged for weeks or even months at a time, and they can be used for reconnaissance missions, strategic deterrence, or combat operations. U.S. intelligence has been closely monitoring the activities at Yulin for years, since China has been rapidly developing its military capabilities and seeking to expand its naval power in the South China Sea. The base has recently undergone several expansions and upgrades, and it has become incredibly more resilient and sophisticated over time. In 2013, the base added a new underground submarine tunnel that connects to a nearby underground submarine pen. This addition was made to enhance the base's ability to withstand a potential attack by either the US or other adversaries. In summary, the Yulin Naval Base is a top-secret military facility on Hainan Island, China, that serves as a base for the country's nuclear-powered subs. It is a key component of China's naval strategy, and it poses a significant challenge to the U.S. Navy's dominance over the seas. What do you think about the Yulin Naval Base? Let us know in the comments down below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying our videos. 3. Dugway Proving Ground. The Dugway Proving Ground is a top-secret military base in the Utah desert. It is one of the most secure and guarded facilities in the whole world, and it serves as a testing ground for advanced military tech. It was first established in 1942, and it's been involved in testing both chemical and biological warfare agents since World War II. It has also expanded its role to include radiological weapons and developing surveillance and reconnaissance systems. The Dugway Proving Ground covers a large plot of land, over 800,000 acres, 3,237 square kilometers. It is remote and isolated, and access to the site is strictly controlled. Only authorized personnel can go inside the base, and they have to undergo rigorous security checks to make it that far. The base has its own community of people who live and work there around the clock, and each of them are highly skilled. The main purpose of the Dugway Proving Ground is to test and evaluate defense systems. This means that they work with some of the most dangerous substances on the planet, but they do it safely and ethically. They also test other types of military equipment, like drones, robots, and communication devices. The researchers use modern laboratories, test chambers, and field test grids to conduct these experiments. The Dugway Proving Ground is a leader in innovation. It has a team of experts who design the latest military technologies. They also conduct frequent tests and simulations to ensure that everything works reliably. The base contributes to the safety and security of the United States and allied nations, but it also respects the environment and the wildlife around it. The Dugway Proving Ground is a place of secrecy and mystery, where science meets art, where challenges meet solutions, where dreams meet reality. It's a place where the impossible becomes possible. It's a place that should never be forgotten. 2. Garcia Diego Island. The secret military base at Garcia Diego Island in the Indian Ocean has been a topic of speculation and mystery for decades. Located about 400 miles, 644 kilometers south of the Maldives, it has been the site of a top-secret American military installation since the 1960s. The base, which is officially known as the U.S. Naval Support Facility Diego Garcia, was established as a strategic site for the U.S. during the Cold War. It's spread over 34 square miles, 88 square kilometers of land, and is home to a number of facilities, including an airfield, a seaport, and a communications complex. The island is uninhabited, while the base personnel are made up entirely of military personnel and contractors. The island is strictly off-limits to any and all civilians, with a 10-mile, 16-kilometer exclusion zone set up around its perimeter. The base at Garcia Diego has been used for a wide variety of military operations over the years. During the Gulf War, it was a key staging area for U.S. aircraft and ships. It has also been used as a detention center for suspected terrorists, and there have been a number of allegations of human rights abuses taking place at the facility. The U.S. continues to maintain a strong military presence at Garcia Diego, with about 4,000 personnel constantly stationed on the island. In recent years, the base has been updated and expanded to accommodate new technologies and more infrastructure. Despite its secrecy, the base at Garcia Diego remains a vital component of the U.S. military's presence in the Indian Ocean. 1. Porton Down. Porton Down is a science park in Wiltshire, England, that is home to 2 British government facilities: the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, DSTL, and the UK Health Secrecy Agency. It also contains other private and commercial science organizations, like Public Health England, the Animal and Plant Health Agency, and the National Collection of Type Cultures. Porton Down was established way back in 1916 as a military research facility for testing chemical weapons during World War I. It was originally called the War Department Experimental Station Porton, and later renamed. Since then, it has expanded its scope to include biological weapons, defense against chemical and biological agents, and research into deadly diseases. It also provides forensic and analytical services, training, education, and emergency response capabilities. Porton Down is one of the most controversial sites in the UK, since it has been involved in several scandals over the years. For example, in 1953, a serviceman named Ronald Madison died after being exposed to sarin nerve gas in a human testing experiment. His death was initially attributed to influenza, but the truth was later revealed. In 2018, Porton Down scientists confirmed that a Novichok nerve agent was used to poison a former Russian spy named Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in Salisbury. The incident sparked a diplomatic crisis between the UK and Russia and led to dozens of diplomats from both countries being expelled. Porton Down claims that it does not produce or stockpile chemical or biological weapons, only small amounts for research and testing purposes. They also say that they follow strict legal standards and that their work is vital for both national security and public health. The facility operates under the oversight of several regulatory bodies, like the Health and Safety Executive, the Environment Agency, and the Advisory Committee on Dangerous Pathogens. They also participate in international treaties and conventions on disarmament and non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Porton Down is located northeast of the village of Porton, near Salisbury in Wiltshire, England. It covers about 7,000 acres, 28.3 square kilometers, and employs about 3,000 people. It is under constant armed guard and has restricted access. Visitors need to obtain security clearance and sign a confidentiality agreement before entering the site. The facility also has its own fire brigade, police force, medical center, and helipad.
8. Camp Century. As Cold War tensions heightened throughout the 1950s, the United States began to obsessively prepare for the possibility of nuclear war with the Soviet Union. During that time, the US Army sought to build a hidden network of missile storage and launch sites beneath the Greenland ice sheet. Codenamed Project Iceworm, the operation was carried out in complete secrecy. To avoid suspicions from Denmark, which ruled over Greenland at the time, the US told the Danish government that it was carrying out a research project called Camp Century. This was also the name given to the base in northwestern Greenland, which consisted of 21 trenches and nearly 2 miles of tunnels. The underground spaces were filled with pre-made buildings, including a hospital, theater, shop, church, and housing for the 200 military members who lived and worked at the covert site. The project hit an unexpected snag when ice core data revealed that the glacier Camp Century was built on was moving much faster than anyone initially realized. At the rate the ice was traveling, the base would most likely be destroyed within 2 years, or at least be made inoperable. For this and other reasons, including Denmark's growing suspicions about the activities of the site, the military abandoned the property in 1965. At the time, the army believed that any waste it left behind would become buried under the ice cap and remain frozen. But they were wrong. While Camp Century is technically buried, the ice is melting from below, bringing its pollutants closer and closer to the water. Researchers are now saying that if the chemical, biological, and radioactive waste left behind at the site isn't cleaned up by the year 2100, it'll start seeping into the surrounding environment. As of 2019, the deserted base was still 62 miles from the glacier's edge, so there's still time to clean it up before it reaches a critical point. However, there's already international disputes over which country is responsible for doing so. 7. Swan Island. While paddleboarding off Australia's southern coast in 2022, 4 teens were swept out to sea. They drifted all night and eventually washed up on the shore of Swan Island, more than 12.5 miles from where they lost control of their paddleboards. Located in Port Phillip Bay in Victoria, the island's western side is home to a members-only golf and yacht club. The eastern side, where the teenagers landed, is occupied by a top-secret military base. Its military history dates back to 1870, when the property was used as a safeguard against potential Russian invasions throughout the Crimean War. During World War I and World War II, it was used for storing explosives. The property became a base after the Australian Secret Intelligence Services, ASIS, acquired it in the late 1950s. Very little is known about the site's modern-day activities, and most people who have an idea of what goes on at Swan Island refuse to talk about it. Officially known as the Swan Island Training Facility, it's believed to function mainly as a training center for ASIS agents. After landing on the beach at around 2 a.m., the stranded teens took shelter in a hut, but military personnel found them several hours later. A spokesperson confirmed to the press that defense personnel provided assistance to 4 civilians, but declined to comment further on the matter. In 2010, a group of 4 activists swam to the property to protest Australia's involvement in the war in Afghanistan. They were caught shutting down electrical equipment and detained, but criminal charges against them were ultimately dropped. 6. Fort Hunt. Located along the Potomac River just south of Washington, D.C., Fort Hunt was originally part of George Washington's Mount Vernon estate. A military base was established on the property shortly before the Spanish-American War. However, it didn't see major wartime use until World War II, when it became the East Coast headquarters for major intelligence operations. Known only as P.O. Box 1142, the base operated in complete secrecy. One of its main functions was to educate soldiers before their deployments on how to avoid capture through an escape and evasion (E&E) program. Troops also learned the best escape methods to use in case they'd already been captured. A total of 3,451 German prisoners of war, who were deemed to be of high intelligence value, were interrogated at the base between 1942 and 1945. The highest-ranking German officer to be held at Fort Hunt was Lieutenant Commander Werner Henke, who was shot dead during an escape attempt in 1944. Prisoners were questioned on everything from Germany's military structure to its weapons technology, scientific research, and rocket development. U-boat captains and crew members were also interrogated about the technical aspects and operations of their submarines. Interrogators underwent extensive training in counterintelligence and psychology. Most of them were recent immigrants to the US who were familiar with German culture and spoke the language. These staff members were renowned for their non-violent methods, which were tailored to individual prisoners of war and were known for being highly effective. Today, the property functions as a civilian park and a picnic area. 5. Wolfsschlucht II. In 1942, the Nazis built a sprawling top-secret bunker in the dense forest of northern France as part of Hitler's plan to invade Great Britain. It was located near the rural commune of Margeval, but it was just one of many hidden German bunkers throughout France and elsewhere in Europe. Codenamed Wolfsschlucht II or Wolfsschlucht II, Hitler envisioned the base as a major command center for leading the German offensive along the Western Front. But the site proved to be largely insignificant, and even Hitler himself only visited once, shortly after the successful landing of the Allies in Normandy on D-Day in 1944. By then, the war had started to turn in favor of the Allies, and the area would soon fall under their control. During his short stay, Hitler held a meeting with some of the highest-ranking officials. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel suggested ending the war, and this infuriated Hitler. The meeting was interrupted by an Allied bombing raid, forcing the attendees to take cover in a bomb shelter. When the raid was over, Hitler fled to Germany and never returned to France. The bunker survived the war and was used by French and NATO forces until the end of the Cold War. Its buildings still stand today and are in a deteriorating state, but efforts are being undertaken to preserve them. If someone offered you $1,000, would you army crawl for 10 miles? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. 4. Cu Chi Tunnels. During the Vietnam War, the Communist Viet Cong (VC) forces had to compete with the much better equipped and better supplied US and South Vietnamese militaries. To gain an edge, the VC dug tens of thousands of miles of narrow underground tunnels in and around Saigon's Cu Chi district, which functioned as the organization's headquarters. Known as the Cu Chi Tunnels, these labyrinths were used for housing troops, transporting supplies, and correspondence. They were also used for situating booby traps, launching surprise attacks, and as a place to retreat during battle. They played a key role in the Viet Cong's guerrilla warfare tactics, which involved hit-and-run style attacks and small-scale ambushes against American troops. The tunnels also gave the VC a major advantage by reducing the effectiveness of aerial bombing attacks, which the US military relied heavily on as a part of its war strategy. Many of the tunnels were dug painstakingly by hand, expanding on an existing network that was built in the 1940s during Vietnam's war for independence from French colonial rule. The conditions were cramped, dank, and stuffy, with VC soldiers often going days at a time without leaving. Pests were rampant, and contagious illnesses spread easily, especially malaria, which was the second leading killer of Viet Cong soldiers after battle wounds. Troops were also plagued by intestinal parasites, with infection rates among units often reaching 100%. The Americans knew about the tunnels, but were unaware of their true size and reach until later on in the war, when US forces began carpet bombing and using other strategies to destroy the secret subterranean networks. After the war, the Vietnamese government preserved the tunnels as memorials and opened some sections up to tourists. 3. Camp Lemonnier. Located in Djibouti City in East Africa, Camp Lemonnier is the only permanent American military base on the whole continent. And while its existence is no secret, the activities that go on there are kept confidential. Originally established as a French Foreign Legion garrison, the sprawling 500-acre base has been leased to the US since 2002. It's dedicated almost entirely to counter-terrorism operations, including Operation Enduring Freedom. Officials at Camp Lemonnier almost always turn down requests for interviews and rarely allow reporters onto the property. When a Washington Post journalist showed up at the base unannounced in 2012, Army Major General Ralph O. Baker agreed to an interview off-site. But he declined to comment on speculation that Camp Lemonnier operates as the headquarters of a targeted killing program that routinely carries out drone strikes in the Middle East. The Washington Post dug deeper though and uncovered declassified documents demonstrating the scope of the drone attacks. Drone operations out of Camp Lemonnier spiked in 2011 after the base received a delivery of 8 Predator drones. Records revealed that the Pentagon planned to expand these activities. At the time, the drone flights were being coordinated by several hundred special operations personnel who worked at a high-security compound and concealed their names from the conventional forces at the base. And while Camp Lemonnier was officially labeled an expeditionary or temporary base at the time, documents show that the Defense Department plans to continue using it for at least another 25 years. They also want to invest a large amount of money on further developments at the base. To add to the secrecy, the troops stationed at Camp Lemonnier aren't allowed to leave the base without permission and are generally banned from interacting with the civilian population. 2. Huoeng-ni. In early 2022, the US-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, announced the discovery of a newly built North Korean missile base called Huoeng-ni. Located in an isolated mountain valley near the Chinese border in Chagang province, it's believed to be one of 20 ballistic missile operating bases that North Korea is trying to keep secret from the rest of the world. CSIS experts discovered the base using satellite imagery. They speculate that it was built to house a military regiment along with intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, which North Korea hasn't managed to develop yet. Should their continued efforts fail, researchers believe the base will be used to store medium-range ballistic missiles, or IRBMs. Around the time Huoeng-ni was discovered, North Korea test-fired a Hwasong-12 IRBM near the base in Chagang province, further pointing toward the site as a weapons storage facility. The discovery of Huoeng-ni came amid rising tensions between the US and North Korea, as the latter refuses to halt its development of nuclear weapons. And while the Hermit King is notoriously private about what goes on within its borders, there's clear evidence that Kim Jong-un is continuing to ramp up his efforts to build an intercontinental nuclear bomb. His decision to keep working on this project is in clear violation of international sanctions that are in place against him. The report from CSIS on Huoeng-ni estimates that construction on the base began around 20 years ago, indicating a level of planning that many experts tend to overlook or fail to recognize. On the other hand, the length of time it took to build Huoeng-ni also reflects the constraints faced by the resource-strapped dictatorship. 1. Secret Chinese base in Cambodia. In recent years, China has built numerous clandestine bases as part of an ongoing plan to rapidly upgrade and modernize its military. Until recently, its only foreign base was in East Africa. In 2022, US intelligence experts discovered a newly established Chinese military facility on the northern end of Cambodia's Ream naval base in the Gulf of Thailand. Speaking anonymously to the Washington Post, one official described the new site as part of Beijing's plan to transform China into a global power. More specifically, having a place to host large naval vessels on the western side of the South China Sea falls in line with China's continued attempts to assert its jurisdiction over the body of water. The unidentified source claimed that both China and Cambodia denied the existence of the Chinese base and said that the countries are going to great lengths to conceal it. Furthermore, the intelligence official believes that China thinks it can bend Cambodia's government to its will, and that Cambodian leaders will ultimately cave into China's demands and desires to avoid the consequences of refusing. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen described reports of the base as fake news. A Chinese Defense Ministry spokesman claimed that China was simply helping Cambodia out with equipment and military training. Another Chinese official confirmed to the Washington Post that part of the base would partially be used by the country's military. However, he denied that the site was exclusively for military use and claimed that it would also operate as a scientific research location. The Cambodian embassy in Washington, D.C. told the Post that Cambodia's constitution prohibits foreign bases on its soil, and they adamantly denied that there was a Chinese military presence in the country.
8. Crash damage or disabled aircraft recovery training. Crash damage or disabled aircraft recovery training, also known as CDDAR, isn't exactly secret, but it's a part of military training that the average person probably doesn't think about too often. Have you ever wondered what happens to an aircraft after it's been damaged during a mission and is no longer flyable? After all, moving an entire plane or helicopter can't be easy or simple. Undertaken by the Air National Guard and Air Force Reserves, CDDAR training teaches military members how to safely and effectively recover all kinds of damaged or disabled aircraft for repair or salvage. After passing the initial training, CDDAR team members take an annual hands-on refresher course. In addition to focusing on the complex logistics of recovering downed aircraft, the program focuses on teaching how to make wise split-second decisions during stressful situations. And while different units specialize in different types of aircraft, they train together and are taught how to respond to any aircraft recovery call. 7. Scotland's secret military ranges. In September 2021, The Scotsman published rare photos of some of Scotland's secret military training ranges. Captured by photographer Alex Boyd, the images revealed some of the country's most expansive yet seldom seen tracts of land, which are owned by the Scottish Military of Defence and cordoned off by red warning signs against trespassing. The properties featured in the photos include fields full of disused, rusting tanks, spent bullets, fake villages, insurgent dummies, and other training equipment. These relics encompass a vast period of time, encompassing every conflict from World War I to the recent failed Western campaign in Afghanistan. They also date back to periods defined by high tensions and a lack of physical combat, namely the Cold War. In Boyd's words, the photos showed some of Scotland's most unspoiled landscapes, which are paradoxically places of conservation and destruction. Filled with the scars of bombing and the machines of warfare, they tell the stories of the country's military priorities, goals, and fears at various given points over the last 125 years or so. One property, the Tain Air Weapons Range, contains one of the United Kingdom's largest preserved dune systems. Boyd described one site, which had clearly been bombed repeatedly over a long period of time, as a lunar landscape of devastation filled with thousands of shell craters. Yet it was also home to a thriving population of red deer, showing yet another example of the contrasting nature of these sprawling, secretive training facilities. 6. Belarus Special Forces. Belarus is informally known as Europe's last surviving dictatorship. The country's refusal to transition to democracy is especially evident in its heavily militaristic culture and the shocking training tactics recruits endure to become elite Red Beret soldiers. Very few participants pass the brutal battery of tests, which are designed to push candidates' physical and mental boundaries to their limits. It takes 5 attempts on average to successfully complete the training. The challenges consist of live fighting, multiple extreme obstacle courses, being able to withstand large amounts of smoke with little to no protection, storming a high-rise building, jumping over fire and smoke bombs, and various other feats of seemingly superhuman strength and agility. There are little to no safety precautions in place for these tests, making it truly every man for himself. And making the cut doesn't mean the torture is over. In fact, in some ways, it means the hard part has just begun. The Belarusian military is deeply influenced by a cacophony of Orthodox Christianity, Soviet-style nationalism, and a pagan holiday called Maslenitsa. To mark important occasions, the Red Berets engage in extreme activities like jumping into freezing cold water, holding formation in below freezing temperatures, log throwing, and placing concrete slabs on recruits' chests and breaking them with sledgehammers. It's not exactly my idea of fun, but some people like a challenge. Would you participate? Let us know in the comments below. But first, be sure to subscribe. 5. American Special Forces in Taiwan. The relationship between the United States and China is complicated, to say the least. When you throw Taiwan into the mix, things get even messier. Taiwan maintains its independence as a capitalist nation, while China asserts its ownership over Taiwan. It's a disagreement that's been ongoing since China's Communist Revolution in 1949. And while the US maintains no official diplomatic relations with Taiwan, the two countries have a good, unofficial relationship. Officially speaking, the US adheres to a One China policy, which means that the government supports Taiwan being part of China. Which is why it was surprising to many when news broke in late 2021 of a small contingent of elite American military members secretly training the Taiwanese military. According to the Wall Street Journal, which broke the story, around 24 Special Forces Rangers and an unspecified number of Marines were assigned to the project. They were reportedly sent to Taiwan during the Trump administration and had been there for at least a year, including after Donald Trump left office. The news came on the heels of an announcement from Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, who said that the island would do anything in its power to defend its freedom, but was not seeking a military confrontation. Pentagon spokesman John Supple declined to comment directly, but stated that our support for and defense relationship with Taiwan remains aligned against the current threat. He further explained that the US was not trying to provoke tensions, but merely to improve the capabilities of Taiwan's defense forces, which, as anyone even remotely familiar with international relations probably knows, will inevitably provoke tensions between the US and China. In response to the news, China's foreign ministry issued a statement that the country will protect its interests at any and all costs. 4. Jade Helm 15. For a 2-month period between mid-July and mid-September 2015, 1,200 personnel from 5 U.S. military branches participated in a training exercise in multiple states known as Jade Helm 15. Sponsored by the United States Special Operations Command, its purpose was to train soldiers in the necessary skills for operating in overseas combat environments, including situations that required navigating through civilian populations. The trainees consisted mainly of Army Green Berets, as well as a small number of Navy SEALs, Air Force Special Operations troops, and conventional infantry members. By definition, the exercise was pretty standard. It's the type of training that one could expect an elite military faction to undergo in preparation for a foreign deployment. According to Jade Helm 15's mission statement, the program was intended to improve the Special Operations Force's capability as part of the national security strategy. But news of the event sparked rampant conspiracy theories that the American government was planning a hostile military takeover. The rumors spread like wildfire. According to one school of thought, the exercise was meant to get civilians accustomed to a regular military presence on the street, so they'll be less likely to ask questions in the event of an actual invasion or takeover. Another theory speculated that the operation was meant to remove guns from civilian hands and/or round up political dissidents. One belief went so far as to claim that the US military was stockpiling weapons in recently closed Walmart stores in anticipation of the arrival of Chinese soldiers who were coming to disarm Americans. And of course, there were rumors about Jade Helm 15 being a plot to impose martial law under the guise of being a harmless training exercise. As you've probably noticed, none of these far-flung ideas ever materialized, that we know of, but some people still believe some of these scenarios could come to fruition. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, but be sure to subscribe first. 3. The Pentagon's Proxy Wars. In July 2022, The Intercept published an exposé revealing the existence of clandestine U.S. counter-terrorism efforts in Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere throughout Africa and the Middle East. According to documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, the Pentagon used a secret privilege known as 127E authority to carry out at least 23 U.S. commando operations between 2017 and 2020 alone, at a cost of at least $310 million. 127E authority was established under the National Defense Authorization Act during the Iraq War that followed the 9/11 terror attacks in 2001. In a nutshell, it gave the Pentagon an unprecedented ability to secretly carry out counter-terrorism operations. These programs are expensive, yet the details are often hard to come by. One shocking report described fierce combat among U.S. Marine Corps raiders and local surrogate forces in Tunisia. Like other rumored 127E operations, the Pentagon has never acknowledged the existence of the alleged program, codenamed Project Obsidian Tower. But declassified and often heavily redacted documents obtained by The Intercept and other news outlets point toward this and other 127E programs being more grounded in reality than conspiracy. Some investigative journalists have described these campaigns as proxy wars, which is when a major world power instigates a war yet stays officially uninvolved. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, the U.S. has secretly engaged in armed conflict in at least 17 countries in the last 2 decades. Without more information, it's hard to say what America's motives are for discreetly slipping its armed forces into other nations, let alone fighting in secret. But these programs are classified for a reason, and many people question whether that reason is truly rooted in an honorable desire to fight terrorism, or if the campaigns are carried out with ulterior motives. 2. Secret bases in the South China Sea. China's wealth has skyrocketed over the last few decades, giving the country an unprecedented foothold in world politics and enabling the rapid expansion of its military. Under its current president, Xi Jinping, China's armed forces have undergone massive buildup and modernization schemes. As things currently stand, the country ranks second only to the U.S. when it comes to military spending. Many of these developments and activities are being carried out in secrecy, but it's clear that one of China's biggest priorities lies in its claims to the South China Sea. At least 6 other countries have made overlapping ownership claims, but none have asserted their dominance as forcefully as China. In 2014, the Chinese military began turning reefs and sandbars into man-made islands and building heavily fortified military bases on them. Many of these clandestine sites are far out into the sea and away from China's shoreline, sparking fears that the sea's use as a crucial global shipping route could be threatened. There are also concerns that the country will capitalize on the natural resources in the waters surrounding the islands, including fish and oil. The far-flung island bases are equipped with runways, missiles, and weapon systems, giving Beijing expanded control over the region. In early 2022, The Guardian reported that at least 3 of the man-made islands were fully militarized, with anti-ship and anti-aircraft missile systems, laser and jamming equipment, and fighter jets. In response to the seemingly aggressive move, the U.S. and its allies have stepped up their military patrols of the area by sailing naval ships past the isolated outposts. China claims that the patrols violate its sovereignty, while the countries carrying out the patrols maintain that they're enforcing the right of free passage in international waters. And none of the parties involved have shown any sign of a willingness to back down, leaving the future of the heavily contested South China Sea unclear as tensions continue to creep toward a boiling point. Do you think the US and China are heading toward a war? Why or why not? Let us know in the comments below. But be sure to subscribe first. 1. Preparing for America's worst day. With the far-reaching and devastating capabilities of modern-day long-range missiles, authorities have every reason to worry about a major attack on a densely populated urban center with little to no warning. In 2022, hundreds of military members and first responders participated in a joint training exercise to prepare them on how to respond to such an attack. The event, dubbed as Dense Urban Terrain, or DUT exercises, took place in Philadelphia and was jointly carried out by local responders and members of a specialized Homeland Security unit. Known as U.S. Army National Guard Task Force 46, the unit can only be mobilized by a presidential declaration. Lieutenant Colonel Brian Higgins, who oversaw the training event, told the Philadelphia Inquirer that the exercise was meant to simulate America's worst day. In other words, a terrorist attack of unprecedented proportions in a busy city, where civilian casualties would be guaranteed to be high. 4 months ahead of time, Task 46 members got closely acquainted with Philadelphia's police, paramedics, and other first responders, including a trauma surgeon. The operation began with Task 46 being dropped off at the training sites by Black Hawk helicopters. Donning hazmat suits, they helped unload and set up equipment and stretchers while working with local personnel to tend to mock victims. including one person whose leg was stuck between a subway train and a platform. Some were crying out for help, while others were unresponsive and in dire need of emergency medical care. Participants treated the situation as if it were actually happening and simulated it to resemble a real-life emergency to the fullest possible extent. One can only hope that they never have to put this training to use, while also being grateful that there are people dedicated to answering that fateful call should the need ever arise. Thanks for watching. Which one of these secret military tactics impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to subscribe for more videos like these. See you soon. Bye.